Ladies and gentlemen, let me ask you something simple, yet powerful. What are you settling for? Because here's the truth. You don't get what you want. You get what you're willing to tolerate. Your life right now, your health, your income, your relationships, they are all reflections of your standards, not your dreams, not your hopes, your standards. See, it's easy to wish for more, but wishing doesn't work. Raising your standards does. When you say, that's it, I'm done living like this, that moment of decision, that's when life begins to shift. You don't need to change everything overnight, but you must change something inside, your expectations of yourself. Your standards are like the thermostat in your house. They determine the temperature of your life. And if the world outside is cold, but your internal standard is set to warm, you'll find a way to turn up the heat. Raise the standard of your health, and you'll start walking instead of sleeping in. Raise the standard of your income, and you'll find ways to provide more value. Raise the standard of your relationships, and you'll stop accepting disrespect. It's that simple. People don't change when they get tired. They change when they get disgusted, when they look in the mirror and say, "Sis is not who I'm meant to be." So here's the challenge. Set a higher standard. Not someday. Today. Because life doesn't respond to your wishes. It responds to your decisions. And remember, your new life begins the moment you stop lowering your standards to fit your situation and start raising them to match your vision. You see, life doesn't hand you what you write on a piece of paper or what you whisper in the dark when no one's listening. Life responds to what you're willing to stand for, and more importantly, what you're no longer willing to stand for. You may say you want more money, better health, a meaningful relationship, a thriving business. But if you tolerate being broke, if you tolerate being tired, if you tolerate being disrespected, then guess what? That's what stays. Not because you like it, but because you allow it. The gap between what you want and what you have is almost always measured by what you're putting up with. It's not the big problems that hold you back. It's the little compromises, the things you say, "It's not that bad," when deep down you know it is. The moment you draw a line in the sand and say, no more, something shifts. Not just in your circumstances, in you. And that shift is what starts to move the needle. You don't even have to know exactly what to do next. The decision itself begins the change. So if you want more out of life, don't just wish for it. Raise your threshold. Raise your cease or refusal. Say, I don't tolerate this anymore. Not in anger, in clarity. That's when you'll find life rising to meet your new standard. Because you don't get what you want. You get what you tolerate. And when you raise that standard, the world notices, and so do you. Standards are the silent architects of your results. They don't shout. They don't announce themselves. They work quietly behind the scenes, shaping every outcome in your life, in your health, your finances, your relationships, your career. You may not even think about them much, but they are always at work, drawing the blueprint of your life like an invisible hand. You see, everyone ends up somewhere, but very few end up there on purpose. Why? Because most people don't realize their standards are calling the shots. Not their desires, not their intentions, their standards. It's not what you say you want that determines your future. It's what you insist on, what you absolutely will not settle below. Think about a builder. Before a single brick is laid, there's a plan, a structure, an outline. That's what standards are. They're the plan that determines the height, the width, the depth of your life. If you set them high, you build tall. If you set them low, you stay ground level. The truth is, your standards show up every day in the little choices. You can see them in what time you get up in the morning, in how you speak to others, in whether you go the extra mile or stop at not good enough. They're there in what kind of food you eat, how you manage your money, how you react when things get tough. You may call it habit, you may call it personality, but under it all, it's your standard whispering, "Sis is what we do." If you accept being late, you'll be late. If you accept just enough money to get by, you'll keep scraping by. If you accept poor health, poor energy, poor thinking, you'll get more of it. And not because you want it, but because your standard allows it. But here's the beautiful part. Standards can change, and when they do, so does everything else. The moment you say, "From now on, I show up early," your life begins to change. The moment you say, "From now on, I don't eat junk," or "From now on, I speak with kindness," or "I deliver more than I promise," that's when the blueprint shifts. That's when you stop building a shack and start building a skyscraper. Raising your standards doesn't cost money. It doesn't take talent. It takes a decision, a commitment, a willingness to say, "This is who I am now, and this is what I expect of myself," no matter what. And don't expect fanfare. Don't expect the world to cheer. Standards are quiet, but over time they speak louder than words. Because while everyone else is still talking about goals and plans and dreams, you'll be team building. And one day, someone will look at your life and ask how you did it. And the answer will be simple. You didn't settle. You set a new standard, and you lived by it. Quietly, daily, relentlessly. That's how results are built. One standard at a time. If you raise your standards, your behavior will follow. You don't even need to shout about it. You don't need to post it on social media, write it on a whiteboard, or announce it to the world. Just raise the standard quietly, firmly, and watch what begins to change. Because here's the deal. You can't live out of alignment with your true standard for very long. When you raise it, your actions have no choice but to catch up. It might not happen all at once, but it happens. When someone decides, I'm not a smoker anymore, something starts to shift. Not because they threw out the last pack, but because their identity changed. The behavior follows the identity. The action follows the standard. Say to yourself, I am someone who keeps promises, especially to myself. Now, suddenly, skipping the workout or hitting snooze feels different. It's not just laziness anymore. It's a violation of who you said you are. That internal tension, that's your new standard calling you up, not beating you down. When the standard is low, excuses sound reasonable. I was tired. It's been a long day, but when does tomorrow will be better? But when the standard is high, truly high, those same excuses feel like poison. They just don't sit well with your spirit anymore. They don't fit with who you've decided to become. Raising your standard is like drawing a new line in the sand. Before, it was acceptable to procrastinate, to complain, to show up late, to put in half the effort. But once the standard shifts, those things feel like betrayal. Not to others, to yourself. You don't have to force discipline when your standards are solid. It becomes natural. You don't need a motivational video every morning. You don't need someone to call you and remind you to do the right thing. The standard does the talking. It whispers, this is how we do things now. And it doesn't matter how long you've lived a different way. It doesn't matter what you've tolerated in the past. The moment you raise your standards, truly raise them, your mind, your body, your habits begin to reorganize themselves around that new expectation. It starts showing up in the way you speak, the way you walk, the way you make decisions, not just the big ones, even the small ones, how you answer the phone, how you treat people, how you manage your time. Because once the standard is lifted, there's no going back. You might slip, sure, everyone does. But the old behavior won't feel normal anymore. It won't feel like home. It'll feel like you're shrinking, like you're betraying something sacred inside you. And that discomfort will pull you back up. See, most people try to change their behavior with willpower alone. And it works for a little while, but it's exhausting. Because willpower is like a battery, it runs out. But when you change your standard, you don't have to push anymore. The standard pulls you forward. It becomes automatic, natural, expected. So the real work? It's not in pushing yourself harder. It's in raising the bar for what you'll accept from yourself, and then refusing to settle below it. Once that shift happens, you won't need to force excellence. It will become the only thing that feels right. Raise the standard. The behavior will follow, always. Decisions shape direction. Standards shape identity. Every day you're faced with decisions. Small ones, big ones. What time to get up, what to eat, how to treat others, what to say yes to, what to walk away from. And these decisions add up, like steps on a path. Each one points you in a direction. That's how you change your life, by choosing a new direction, one decision at a time. But decisions are just the start. They tell you where you're headed. Standards, now that's a different story. Standards go deeper. Standards tell you who you are, not just what you do, but what you won't do, what you allow, what you refuse, what you stand for, even when no one's watching. See, direction can change with one choice. You could decide today to get in shape, to start a new business, to speak with more kindness, to save money. That's direction. But identity, that's rooted in repetition. That's rooted in what you demand of yourself, day in and day out. Standards are what take a good decision and turn it into a lasting transformation. There are people who make bold decisions every January. They declare a new goal, a new vision, a new plan. That's good. It's the first step. But what happens when the emotion fades? What happens when it gets hard? Without a new standard, the decision fades. Because the standard is what reinforces the decision, especially on the days when you don't feel like it. Direction is about movement. Standards are about being. You can head in a new direction, but until your standard says, "This is just who I am now," you're running on momentum that can wear out. When your standard says, I'm the kind of person who finishes what I start," you don't quit. When your standard says, "I don't lie to myself," you stop breaking promises to yourself. When your standard says, "I show up with excellence," your work reflects it, even if nobody's applauding. And here's something most people miss. You don't rise to your goals, you fall to your standards. When pressure hits, when time is short, when the challenge grows, you don't lean on your best intentions, you fall back on your foundation. And that foundation is made up of the standards you've set or failed to set. Standards shape your self-respect. When you live below your standard, you feel it. You might not talk about it, but deep down you know it eats at you. But when you live above your past standard, when you raise the bar and stick with it, you grow. And that growth rewrites your identity. You begin to see yourself differently. Not because someone clapped for you, but because you know kept the promise. And once that identity changes, once you truly believe, "This is who I am now," that's when the results become consistent. That's when you no longer need motivation to do the right thing. The behavior matches the belief. It's no longer a struggle, it's just your way. You want a new life? Make a new decision. But if you want that new life to stay, you've got to build new standards. Because direction without identity is short-lived. But when you change who you are at the standard level, the change becomes permanent. You can change your path in a moment. You change your destiny by becoming someone new, one standard at a time. Excuses disappear when standards are non-negotiable. People come up with all kinds of reasons for why they don't follow through. When I was tired. Sin, I didn't have enough time. Weather wasn't right. Sin, they didn't support me. The list never ends. And it always sounds convincing, at least to the one saying it. But there comes a point where you realize that excuses are nothing more than exit doors. They're ways to justify staying where you are instead of moving forward. Now here's the truth. Excuses only survive in environments where standards are soft, flexible, and negotiable. As long as your standard is, "I'll do it if I feel like it," or "I'll try if it's convenient," then life will always find a way to distract you, delay you, or derail you. But the moment you set a standard that is non-negotiable to every cent, everything changes. When your standard becomes, "I do what I said I'd do, no matter what," you no longer debate with yourself. You no longer ask, "Do I feel like it today?" You've already decided. The conversation is over before it begins, and with that clarity, the excuses vanish. Think about it. When something is non-negotiable, like breathing, you don't need motivation. You don't say, "Well, I'll breathe if I have time." No, you breathe, because it's essential. You've already determined it's not optional. You've never made a deal with yourself about it. That's the mindset you need for the things that matter in life. When you raise your standard to the point where it's not up for discussion, that's when you find consistency. You may be tired, but you still show up. You may be busy, but you find a way. You may be uncomfortable, but you push through, because the standard is already spoken. The reason people live with mediocrity isn't because they lack potential. It's because they make too many deals with themselves. They say, "Just this once," or "I'll start tomorrow," or "It's not that bad." Those little deals create gaps. In those gaps, excuses grow. But when there are no deals, no loopholes, no back doors, there's no room for the excuse to live. You crowd it out with conviction. When your standard is, I don't miss workouts, then it doesn't matter if it's raining, if you're tired, if your day got hectic. You move your schedule around. You go at night if you have to. You walk laps in your living room if that's what it takes. But you don't skip, because that's not who you are anymore. And it's not about being perfect. It's about being committed. Non-negotiable doesn't mean rigid. It means resolved. It means the decision has already been made and now you just follow through. It's not about whether life cooperates. It's about whether your standard holds. The higher your standard, the smaller your tolerance for your own excuses. And eventually you stop needing to push yourself so hard, because the standard starts doing the pushing. It becomes a part of you. And when that happens, you'll notice something powerful. You gain energy. You gain pride. You gain trust in yourself. There's no energy drain like living below your own expectations. But there's no energy boost like doing what you said you would, even when no one else is watching. That's integrity. That's discipline. And that's where self-respect lives. So if you want to stop making excuses, don't focus on the excuses. Focus on your standards. Set them so clearly, so firmly, so deeply that they leave no room for negotiation. Then stick to them, especially when it's hard. That's how transformation begins. And that's how it sticks. Your standards are either inherited or chosen. Choose them. You didn't arrive in this world with a rule book in your hand. You were born into an environment, into a culture, into a family, into a neighborhood. And early on, without even realizing it, you started absorbing things. How people think, how they speak, how they handle problems, how they treat money, how they deal with relationships, how they face adversity. Most of it you didn't choose. It was passed down to you. It was modeled. It was assumed. It was normal. But here's the truth. Just because it's normal doesn't mean it's right. Just because it's familiar doesn't mean it's serving you. Some people grow up around negativity, and they think it's normal to complain. Some people grow up where success is rare, and they believe that ambition is prideful. Others grew up where discipline was harsh, or where laziness was excused, or where mediocrity was explained away with a shrug and a story. And you can live your whole life under that, unless you stop and examine it, unless you step back and ask yourself a bold question: who set the standard I'm living by, and do I agree with it? See, that's when growth begins. The moment you realize that you are not bound to keep living under the standards you inherited, you can inspect them, question them, and if necessary, replace them. Because you are not a copy of your parents, or your community, or your past. You're not a reflection of your history. You're a product of your decisions. Now, some people hear this and get defensive. Are you saying my family was wrong? No, not necessarily. But here's what I'm saying what you owe it to yourself to look closely at what you've inherited and decide what to keep and what to leave behind. Just because it was passed down doesn't mean you have to pass it on. There comes a time in every life where you stop being a mirror of your environment and start becoming the architect of your future. That's the power of choice. You don't get to choose where you start, but you absolutely get to choose where you go. If the people around you made excuses, you can decide to make progress. If the people before you settled, you can decide to rise. If the ones who raised you didn't believe in dreaming big, you can choose to build something they never imagined. That's not betrayal. That's growth. And choosing your own standard doesn't mean you disrespect where you came from. It means you take full responsibility for where you're going. It means you say, I see what I was given, and now I'm deciding what I will carry forward. So maybe you inherited a standard that says, just get by. You can raise it too, excel. Maybe you inherited a standard of reactivity, always reacting, never preparing. You can raise it to responsibility. Maybe you inherited a standard of silence. Don't speak up, don't stand out. You can raise it to courage. Whatever it is, you don't have to keep living inside someone else's limitations. You can choose to live by a standard that's built around your values, your vision, and your purpose. And once you choose that standard, really choose it, the world around you starts to shift. You begin to attract new people. You begin to notice new opportunities. You begin to move in new directions. Not because the world changed, but because your internal standard did. So take a good look at the standards you've been living with. Are they yours, or were they handed to you? Are they building the life you want, or keeping you where you've always been? Because when you choose your standards, you're not just choosing rules, you're choosing your future. And that's one choice no one else can make for you. Choose wisely, then live like it. The quickest way to change your life is to change your minimums. Now that might not sound dramatic enough for some people. It's not flashy, it's not exciting, but it's powerful. Because here's what most people never realize. Your minimums, not your maximums, are what shape your life. Not what you hope for, not what you occasionally reach when things are going great, but what you absolutely refuse to go below. Everyone talks about raising the ceiling. More income, more freedom, more health, more fulfillment. But they never think about raising the floor. And that's the foundation. That's the standard you stand on, the level beneath which your life simply won't fall. Until you raise that floor, the ceiling doesn't matter, because you'll always snap back to the minimum you've accepted. It works like a thermostat. You can walk into a cold room, but if the thermostat is set to 72 degrees, the heater will kick in. Same with you. If your minimums are set high enough, life can cool off, things can dip, but you'll feel the drop and automatically take action to bring it back up. You won't tolerate staying cold. You'll move. You'll correct. You'll respond. The problem is, most people have low minimums and high expectations. They want a better job, but their minimum is showing up late. They want to be fit, but their minimum is skipping workouts. They want financial freedom, but their minimum is being broke every month and saying it's just the way things are. But the moment your minimum becomes, I don't carry credit card debt, your behavior starts to change. When your minimum becomes, I don't miss workouts ever, your schedule shifts. When your minimum becomes, Sinai, don't speak to people with disrespect, not even when I'm upset, your relationships improve. You want to get healthier? Don't wait for perfect meal plans. Just raise your minimum to, see, I don't eat fast food anymore. Boom, the change begins. Want to get more productive? Raise your minimum to, see, I don't touch my phone before I plan my day. One small shift, big ripple effect. It's not the big decisions once in a while. It's the low bar you keep walking over every single day. Your life changes the moment you say, bonus is no longer acceptable to me. There's power in that line. The line you draw and say, below this, I don't go. Not for them, not for convenience, not for comfort, not even for me on a lazy day. And you don't need to raise everything overnight. You just need to pick a 1% minimum and raise it. Start with the way you speak, or how you start your mornings, or how you manage your time, or what kind of people you allow around you. Because once you raise one minimum, you'll start to notice something. Your sense of identity changes. You start walking different, thinking different. Because now you expect more from yourself, not in theory, but in practice. And that's when momentum kicks in. Not because you had some big breakthrough, but because you finally got tired of living below what you know you're capable of. You raised your bottom line. And when that bottom line moves up, everything else in your life has to rise with it.